This surah is known as Suratul Maida. There is a lot to say about this surah, because this is one of the last surahs that was revealed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What does that mean? How would that make any difference? The main thing is, as we know, orders of Sharia were being established gradually. Even Sahaba within themselves, they wanted to find out what was the last order of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam regarding a subject or a topic. So they were looking for the last one. So when you know about this surah being one of the last surahs, you know that the orders that have been established in this surah are firm and final. And if there were any orders established before this, and this surah is saying something different, then this will be the final ruling, which is called an-nasikh wal-mansukh. The abrogated ayahs and the one that abrogate those ayahs. That's a whole topic, inshallah. We'll talk about it as we get to some of those rulings. Before I introduce the surah, as the name of the surah, the subject matter of the surah, one thing I like everyone to know about this surah, that generally, with many surahs and ayat of Al-Qur'an Al-Kareem, you can take it as a lecture, as a talk, and get the advices from there that normal person would understand in simple language. A person who doesn't have any background of Islamic knowledge, sciences, will get the general meaning of it. Surah Al-Ma'idah is very, very deep when it comes to the rulings of Sharia. I said it's fine. And it establishes a lot of rulings also. And many of those rulings are such that we need to know some details of the ruling before we understand what this ayah is talking about. Because we need to know the background. It would be just like someone says, we have to offer a prayer. Now, a newcomer to Islam who doesn't know what prayer means, when we say the word prayer, he would have his own understanding of a prayer. But a believer, a mu'min who knows what salah is, when he would hear the word prayer, he has a whole concept in mind. Salah, although it needs a good understanding of the full concept of salah, but generally people know it. But the ahkam and the ruling that we would go through in this surah, we would see that there are the type of rulings that generally, if a person have not studied in depth the fiqh of the Sharia, then many of us may not be aware of what ruling this is applying to and talking about. So we can say in simple words that this surah and this understanding of this surah is more of an academic way of presenting the knowledge. It's not just lecture. It's about knowing some backgrounds. And many times when you look at the ayah, in one ayah, just like starting from the very first one, and the first one has the least maybe, and the first one has at least 5 rulings in it. So this is how the surah is. You can go over it quickly, and we can just pass over them. And of course, there will be some understanding of what the ayah is talking about. But if we want to look into the depth of it, then we need to understand the proper wordings, the background of these messages, and the background of the rulings. Because most of the time, Qur'an will speak about one ruling out of a whole topic. Then we need to find out the background of that full topic and then see where this ruling will apply within that topic. For example, the ruling of marriage. We know that there is a full book in the books of fiqh called Kitabun Nikah. That will have a lot of rulings about nikah, starting from what is the proper way of doing the nikah, who the nikah would be for, who can do it, who can perform it, the age of the nikah, and then the do's and don'ts of the nikah, and the obligations in the nikah, and the people you can marry, people you cannot marry. All of those details will come in the Abwab al-Nikah, in the chapter of Nikah, but the ayah will tell us one ruling out of those. So we need to see how it fits between all of those rulings. Of course, not to scare you and say we are going to study the full book of fiqh now over here, but we will need to understand some background at least of the rulings that we will be going through. Inshallah, we will go into some of these details of the rulings so we can understand the concept of the ayah and the message of the ayah and the ruling that have been established in the ayah. And also at the same time, we will try to see why the ruling is being mentioned specifically over here out of so many other rulings. The surah is known as Suratul Maida. And I'm sure we ask anyone, why do you call it Suratul Maida? It's simple, because it's a surah that talks about a Maida. What is that Maida? The Shaykh was talking about it earlier, that it was the final feast of, according to the concept that they have in their religion about Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. Of course, it's referring to a feast that took place during the life of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, but Qur'an does not recognize that to be the final one. In fact, according to the ayat of Al-Qur'an, it was not the final one. And we will talk in more detail once we get to those ayat. But we got to remember, the names of the surah is not about just picking up a word from the surah and then we say, okay, this is why the surah is having this name. Just like Surah Al-Baqarah. As-Surah allati tudhkaru fiha al-Baqarah, the surah that talks about Al-Baqarah. And then we will say, because that story of the Baqarah is only in Surah Al-Baqarah, this is why. But was that story of the Baqarah so important that we will say that the name was chosen out of the whole surah? That was the most important thing in the surah. So it's not about picking up a word and using it as a name. It's about the subject matter of the surah in relation to that specific story that have been mentioned in the surah. Al-Baqarah is referring to a whole story of a cow that has been mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah. And then the connection of that story with the subject matter of the surah. And the importance of that story in the life of those about whom the surah is talking about. And then connection of that story with our life as we would fall into similar type of situation. Same thing here, Surah Al-Ma'idah. As-Surah allati tudhkaru fiha al-Ma'idah, the surah that talks about Al-Ma'idah. And I'll explain the word Ma'idah. But it's not about just picking up a word from there. This surah has a very deep message related to Al-Ma'idah. What is Ma'idah? Is the table or a mat on which you would place your food. Anything that you would put your food on will be called Ma'idah. It could be a sheet, it could be a table, or anything else that you would use for placing your food on it. It will be called Al-Ma'idah. So this is our Ma'idah, this is our Ma'idah, and on the Ma'idah you can put different items. This surah, as we will see from the very beginning, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu لا تقتلوا الصيد وأنتم حرم لا تحلوا شعائر الله ولا الشهر الحرام ولا الهدي ولا القلائد ولا آمين البيت الحرام. So it will talk a lot about things that you would place on the Maida, on your dining table. As I said, this surah goes in depth about a lot of rulings. And of course, at the very beginning, أُحِلَّتْ لَكُمْ بَهِيمَةُ الْأَنْعَامِ. This is talking about the animal that is halal for us. And from there we can see surah from the very beginning is getting into Al-Maida. It's not just that Maida. That was their dining table. And of course, it has a close connection to the message of the surah. But here, right from the very beginning, you see the message is going towards that dining table. Which animals are halal, which animals are not halal. This is your dining table. And there was a lot, and still there is a lot of misunderstanding about Al-Ma'idah, about the dining table. What to put on it, what not to put on it. Someone will say this is halal, someone will say no, this is haram, someone says this is makruh, someone will say no, I don't care about that. So, dining table, see, Ma'idah is related from the very beginning of the surah. And then there are extremes about the Ma'idah. For some people, anything you find that you can digest, go ahead and eat it. Animals, insects, you name it, including human bodies and ingredients driven from human beings. Don't worry about it. Eat it. I'm sure some of us at least are aware that there are many ingredients that are being used in the food in today's industry, food industry, approved, and they are driven from human beings. They could have other sources also, but one of those sources is from human bodies. Now, how much do we allow that in the country? How much we don't allow? But if you think, and anyone think, that anything driven from human body, any of those ingredients is not allowed into the country and we will never be able to eat it, we need to study the ingredients. That's the least I can say. Maybe it's just a joke that I would make about that if you get the showers that comes from China, they have a special trap for hair. Special trap for hair. So you can pull it out and take all the hair out. I say because they can make good L-cystine out of it. You know L-cystine? It's in many of our baking goods and products. One of the sources of L-cystine is human hair. Although it is animal hair also, feathers also, but it's one of them is human hair. So you take a shower, then you give them over there to the laboratories, they're going to give you your bread. Or at least an ingredient for your bread. This is just to remind ourselves that look at the ingredients carefully. The point I was mentioning is not here this year, that will come later. Right now, the point is, there are some people who would say, eat whatever you can consume. And then, especially when those companies will advertise the benefits of these products, then it will make you healthy, it will open up your lungs, it will save you from getting into the old age. And today's day, everyone is trying to protect himself from getting old. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, every disease in this world has a treatment except for one, and that one is old age. I'm sorry if I'm giving you any bad news. And all of us are heading there. Some of us are already there, and we feel that I'm going to stop it from getting to me. It won't be too long. We all are getting there. But this is something that worries people. And this is where companies will get us. This is what's going to stop you from getting theirs. Here, you use this. On the other hand, there are people who would say, no, don't eat anything that has life to it. Just eat grass, eat vegetables. That's it. Don't eat nothing that has any life to it. You know that. And those people, vegetarians. It's Allah's blessing to have those people. It helps us when we travel to find vegetarian food, so at least you don't have to worry about halal and haram. So Allah uses them for that also. But for them, the whole life is that way. Don't eat nothing other than that. You can't eat anything that had any life to it. So these are extremes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us the boundaries, tells us the rulings about what is good, what is not good, what is allowed, what is not allowed, what is lawful, what is not lawful. So this surah will go into some detail of that also. But as I said, this is what Maida is really telling us. The word Maida. So Maida is not just about a word from a story, and this is why, because that story is mentioned here, this is why this surah is called Maida. No, it's much deeper than that. This surah has a lot to do with our Maida and with our dining tables, and will inform us a lot about the food that we are supposed to eat, not supposed to eat, and more important than all of that, the effect of that food on us. There is a saying, you are what you eat. And it's not a wrong saying. It's not really a wrong saying. You are what you eat. What we eat affects us. Because it's a cane. You put in it something, when you open the cane, it will be the effect of what you put in there. There is a cane, you fill it with garbage, when you open it, it's going to smell bad. There is a cane, you fill it with rose water, you open it, you're going to have a good smell from there. So it all depends on what we are saying, what we are looking at. People having everything in halal, still they are looking at haram here and there. It's because the garbage that has been filled in there. Haram is looking for haram. When the person eats, this food goes in different portions of the body and does different things. Inshallah, as I said, the surah is important about that, about this Maida, and we'll go into some details of it. But very quick introductions here. This food will go to different parts of the body. Will supply the nourishment to our nails, to our hair, to our skin, to our flesh, to the bones, to our brain, our eyes, our ears. Everything is getting what they are supposed to be getting without us knowing what's happening within our system. But we ate an apple, and this apple is doing all of these things at the same time, and I'm not even aware. And at the end, then there are things that are not needed, and they are waste, and they come out in two different ways. One of these things that we eat, one of the things that we eat from our dining table, from our Maida, and as our body digests that food, it comes out in a form of another human being. You realize this? إِنَّا خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِن نُطْفَةٍ أَمْشَاجٍ نَبْتَلِيهِ. We created the human being from a sperm that was mixed, amshaj, that was mixed of so many things. This is from our Maida. We ourselves are the product of that Maida. Apples came from one country, oranges came from another country, meat came from a third country, vegetables from another country, all of it on your Maida, on your dining table. We eat all of that. It creates the sperm within the human body, and then that becomes your child. Min nutfatin amshaj. Now, the effect of what we ate, on what we produce. That's the one. Number two, and this is very important for our youth to realize, that after eating, it's time to discharge. So a person wants to urinate. If he's going to hold it, he will. He has to discharge it. Has to come out. There are two ways. One is you go and stand on the side of the road and start urinating. Everyone is watching you. The other is you go and find a bathroom for yourself and close the door, lock your door, and then use it properly. See, that sperm that is developing as a result of the Maida, of the food that we ate, and now it is coming in the form of we have to discharge it. Go out on the street or you go home. This is why the surah will talk about rulings of nikah. It's part of the Maida. Our actions. Someone doesn't have food. He didn't have food for days. After all of that, when he's hungry and he knows children are waiting, family is waiting for having some food, he gets $5 in his hand. What do you think he's going to go do? He will go and buy a piece of bread. But there's another person who has his fridge full and he's been eating to his fullest before he gets hungry, he gets the next meal, and again, before he can digest this one, his fear is he's going to have problem with all of the food or with overeating. Now he gets $5 in his hand. What is he going to do? Buy a cigarette or buy a movie or buy something there where he's going to waste his money? So our actions are going to be also depends on how this Maida is filling our bellies. When the bellies are always full, then shaitan comes. When you keep it empty sometime, then the person stays with it. I'm hungry, I need to buy some food. But when I'm full, and still there is extra, let me go and look for something now. This is what shaitan does. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he talked about some people coming towards the end of the days, and they would be denying the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and they will say, we don't need the hadith. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he described those people, it's an amazing description. He says, لا ألفين أحدكم متكئا على أريكته شبعان. I don't want to see any of you leaning on his couch, his belly is full, and then he says, Qur'an is enough for me, I don't need a hadith. When did he get to that point? When the belly was full and he had his couch that he's leaning on. Which means he's having a comfortable life. Now the shaitan is playing with his mind. If he was hungry, then he would not have time for getting into all of these fitnas. He will say, I'm worried about my family right now. So all Maida is big thing, is related to everything in our life. It affects us. As sometimes we say, some people say, you don't worry about this dunya, you kick it away. And one of the scholars said a beautiful thing. He said, if you don't eat food, you won't even be able to lift your foot to kick the dunya. So you have to eat before you can lift your foot and kick someone. Otherwise you won't be able to kick. So this is Maida. And as we will see, this surah goes into a lot of depth of things related to this topic. And then this surah, Surah Al-Ma'idah, talks about very important 5 subjects. I'm not saying it's limited to that, remember, but 5 subjects that are considered to be foundation of the rulings of the Sharia. 5 subjects considered to be foundation of the rulings of the Sharia. And that is protecting 5 things in our lives. Number 1, protection of our deen. Protection of our deen. This surah talks about the rulings about how to protect the deen, and the ruling about people who would try to go against that. Also, number 2, protection of our lives is one of the very main rulings of Sharia, foundations of Sharia. Remember, these are called the 5 foundations of the Sharia. And I will tell you why later, inshallah. Number 1, protection of the deen. Number 2, protections of the life. And this surah talks about qisas and protection of the life. Number 3, protection of people's mental status. So that everyone has the freedom to think the right way. Anything that would affect that it will be against the rules of the Sharia. And this surah talks about the forbidden of al-khamr, intoxicants, to protect everyone's brain and mind. Number 4, protection of people's honor and dignity. And this surah will talk about the prohibition of a zina, because otherwise the human race will be lost. And number 5, it talks about the protection of people's wealth. And we will see that it talks about the punishment for stealing and for other things. So this surah talks about the foundations when it comes to not aqa'id, about the rules of the Sharia that we call it fiqh. And accordingly, Sharia establishes punishments for 5 things. Murtad, protection of the deen. Qisas, protection of life. Hadd al-sariqa, protection of wealth. Hadd al-zina, protection of wealth. Hadd al-sariqa, stealing, protection of wealth. And protection of the dignity, zina, and the falsely accusing others. That is in Surah An-Nur. So 5 types of qisas. Qisas is basically based on, or when that capital punishment comes in Sharia, is based on these 5 rules, 5 foundations. There is no had that is being established in Sharia outside of these 5 foundations. To protect these 5 things, the capital punishments have been assigned by Sharia. So here we see Sharia is trying to protect human beings. Even the punishments that have been established in Islam is mainly for the safety of human beings. Let's just take one simple example. When Sharia says, do not commit zina, it's protection of, we will say, Sharia is limiting me and not allowing me to do what I want. Not allowing me to do what I want. I like to go and commit adultery here, here, here. Sharia is protecting other people's daughters. But in reality, more than protecting other people's daughters, for you yourself, Sharia is protecting your own daughter. Now imagine this, that you are only one person. How many daughters of the world you are going to attack? But if all of those people will attack your daughter, how are you going to protect your daughter? So it's a greater protection. Then we consider it to be taking away my freedom. Everywhere where we find there is something that, according to our understanding, affecting my freedom, just take it the other side. Take the other side of it and come back to yourself. You will see that it's a greater protection than limiting your freedom. Always. Anyway, we are not here to discuss the hikmahs of the Sharia right now, but this is so that we can understand the rulings, the way this surah will be establishing, and how this surah is establishing all the foundations of the Sharia. Surah Al-Baqarah and Surah Al-Imran, they were mainly talking about the aqaid, beliefs, and establishing the iman. And Surah Al-Nisa, and then in more detail of it, of Surah Al-Maida, is talking about the establishments of the fiqh and of the Sharia. So this is basically the quick background of the surah. And then the surah, the way it starts with Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Then the second portion of it, أَوْفُوا بِالْعُقُودِ, fulfill your contracts. Very important. And then it goes into the ruling, وَحِلَّتْ لَكُمْ بَهِيمَةُ الْأَنْعَامِ. Inshallah, we will talk about these rulings in our next session, inshallah. As that, because this surah talks a lot about the ruling, so we will not be going into taking too much time, because rulings are such that for many people it becomes a little boring after a short while. So we will take it slowly, inshallah, so that enough that we can digest and remember what we're talking about. Everything will be connected to the next as we will keep on moving forward, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always keep us connected to His book and give us tawfiq to benefit from His book and benefit from the nur and the rahmah and the barakah and the ilm that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have sent to us through this book. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala khayri khalqihi sayyidina wa habibina wa nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.